Fears surrounding COVID-19 are backfiring on Democrats in a pretty bad way, mostly for Nancy Pelosi. And I don't want to pretend like it's only Democrats that are worried about COVID. I think most people have some reasonable concerns about it. But it is statistically true, at least from Gallup polls, that Democrats are way more fearful. Now, what's happening is that Republicans won a bunch of seats in the House, giving the Democrats a very slim majority. Nancy Pelosi would like to be Speaker of the House again, but she's got some problems. You see, some individuals have tested positive for COVID, and there are fears that when it comes time to vote, enough Democrats will be out sick with COVID, and Nancy Pelosi won't get the votes she needs. But it's more than just COVID fears. There's actually a lot going on. Republican victories are creating a very dangerous situation for Nancy Pelosi and establishment Democrats because progressives don't like Nancy Pelosi, and they've been given some very strong leverage against her. Any way you cut it, things are looking really bad for Pelosi. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I got a normalcy bias, and I wouldn't call this an optimism bias, just normalcy. The Democrats are going to line up behind Pelosi. She's going to get the votes, but things are precarious, and there is a possibility that with a minority House representation, the Republicans get the Speaker of the House for Kevin McCarthy. Because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of fears around COVID-19. Now, the crazy thing about this is the detriment. This is a problem of the Democrats' own making. Democrats are the ones who have been screaming about the fears of COVID. It's been the Democratic governors shutting everything down. And it's typically the Democrats that are terrified of this. And I'm not saying terrified to be disrespectful, but they literally are. The Gallup poll I just cited shows that only around 5% of Democrats feel safe to go out and get back into the workforce. Republicans overwhelmingly are like, let's get on with it. I think typically you'll see among moderates and Republicans a concern about COVID, but a realization that locking everything down just didn't work. And you have to accept that, well, we're going to have to get back to work. Otherwise, everything's going to fall apart. So long as Democrats keep pushing nonsensical policy, you will hear stories about their nonsensical policies backfiring on them. You want to whip everybody up into this tizzy and this fear over this virus? Don't be surprised when it backfires on you, because it's not just about these Democrats saying, I'm sick, I can't come in. It's about what would happen to them if, even if they aren't sick, they still came in to vote. Well, then Democrats are going to be like, you're going to get everybody else sick, and Republicans are going to take over, basically. Because realize this, even though the Democrats have a slim majority, enough people calling in sick or being unable to attend votes could help the Republicans. Now, I suppose there's some way they can remotely vote. There's been some talk about this. I don't know exactly where we're at, but the official story is COVID-19 could complicate Pelosi's path to Speaker next year. Add to this, 2 new House members are declining to say they'll back Pelosi for Speaker. Nancy Pelosi may reap what she has sown with constantly playing these games. The progressives are angry about a lot of things, but I'll tell you this right now. The stimulus package that's supposed to go through, the Democrats are blaming Republicans for it. But here's the problem for Democrats. We see through the games. They knew unanimous consent would never work, and they wasted our time. Nancy Pelosi said, okay, if everybody wants $2,000, unanimous consent, without dealing with the pork in the bill. This bloated garbage bill that gives our money away when we're most desperate. It's not going to work. I think a lot of people are going to get sick and tired of the political games, and you add COVID into the mix, Pelosi very well may lose Speaker of the House. So this could get a little weird and crazy, but let's read the news and see what's going on. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you would like to support my work. There are many ways you can give. We've got a P.O. box if you want to send some stuff, but the best thing you can do is share this video if you like the work that I'm doing and think this information is important. I got a lot more to talk about than just this, too, because the problems that we're seeing in Congress, I've been for a long time saying it's civil war among Democrats. I think the focus should be on Pelosi right now because she is in the majority party in the House. She is Speaker. And it's not like Mitch McConnell's going to lose, party leader in Senate majority. Unless, of course, they lose in Georgia. So we'll see how that plays out. But the conflict within the political party establishment, the establishment political parties, it's affecting both parties. Republicans are starting to tear each other apart as much as Democrats had been. So this is going to be, interesting conversation. Well, I shouldn't call it a conversation, but an interesting segment to say the least. If you think it's good, please share this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let's read the first story and see what's going on with Nancy Pelosi potentially losing Speaker of the House. The Hill reports, as Speaker, Nancy Pelosi seeks the support to keep the gavel for another term. Her allies are keeping close watch on a potential wild card that could complicate her path next month, COVID-19. Pelosi is already facing a much slimmer majority in the next Congress after Democrats were clobbered at the polls in November, meaning she can afford far fewer Democratic defections than the 15 who opposed her 2 years ago. She might actually lose this. Wow. And lawmakers must be present on the House floor to cast their vote for Speaker, precluding the option for members to vote remotely, as many have done throughout the pandemic. So they can't do it this time. The combination of factors creates the chance that Democrats could face a dilemma on January 3rd in which Pelosi locks up Democratic support to remain Speaker. But coronavirus concerns, illnesses, quarantines, or otherwise, prevent a sufficient number of them from being in the Capitol to log their votes. A failure of Pelosi to secure support from half the voting members would at the very least throw the process into chaos. In the Democrats' nightmare scenario, the math could tilt so far in the Republicans' favor that it yields a GOP speaker. That would be absolutely incredible. And I'm not saying incredible because I support the Republicans. I got a lot of problems with the Republican establishment. But just think of the absurdity. Republicans maintain control of the Senate. Joe Biden's president. The House is a Democrat majority, but with a Republican speaker. Wow, that would be nuts. Quote, let's just say theoretically, we had 6 or 8 people out with COVID and the Republicans have none. They probably could elect Kevin McCarthy, said Rep. John Yarmuth, a Democrat, referring to the House GOP leader. Lawmakers were reminded of their vulnerability this week when 5 members of the House tested positive for COVID-19, bringing the total number of infected lawmakers to at least 35 since the pandemic hit roughly a year ago. With that in mind, Pelosi's supporters say it's an outbreak over the holidays, not Democratic detractors, that poses the single greatest threat to Pelosi's otherwise expected speakership victory next month. We're in a healthcare crisis, right? No one can get sick. That's the X factor, said one Democrat, a Pelosi ally who spoke anonymously to discuss a sensitive topic. We need everyone to be healthy. That's the big fear. Because I'll tell you what, let's say Republicans get sick. So what? They're the minority party anyway. Kevin McCarthy's not going to be the speaker. It's the problem arises if Democrats get sick. Now, if both get sick, then the point is moot. But combine potential COVID illness with defectors, of which there were 15 last time around, adding 2 more, House newcomers who are already saying they won't support Pelosi, things are starting to look pretty bad for Pelosi. The progressives are gaining substantial leverage, and many progressives, notably Jimmy Dore, have been demanding a floor vote on Medicare for all, which they could do, but they won't. Why? Even many of these progressives who are in Congress are establishment shills who are just trying to maintain their careers. So they're playing ball while pretending to care about you. The same is true for Republicans. Many of these Republicans who voted no on the omnibus spending bill did so knowing it would pass anyway. And they can just pretend like, oh, geez, oh, no, look, I voted no. But they don't really care. It should have been a resounding no for this garbage, but it gets through anyway. And nobody read it either. That's nuts. They're going to say some of those fears are being assuaged with the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine to protect the continuity of government. House and Senate lawmakers now have the opportunity to receive a vaccination in the Capitol from the attending physician. Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader McConnell were among the first to get their shots on Friday. Quote, as the vaccine is being distributed, we must all continue mask wearing, social distancing, and other science-based steps to save lives and crush the virus, Pelosi tweeted alongside a photo of her getting the vaccine. People are criticizing AOC for getting the shot before a bunch of other people, and they're criticizing Republicans for downplaying the virus and then getting the vaccine. Okay, if you want to claim that and criticize Republicans for downplaying this, then this is absolutely a COVID panic backfire on Democrats. Republicans going to get the vaccine. They seem to got no problem criticizing it, but still getting the vaccine. And I don't think the hypocrisy works all that much. This idea, look, you can say it's not that big of a deal and still get the vaccine. You might not be worried that the flu is going to wipe out the planet and you'll still get a flu shot. That's just not an argument. It's the Democrats that are overwhelmingly pushing this fear, that have used it to try and win this election. So I tell you this, throughout the entire past year, they have been using COVID to change election rules because they wanted Trump to lose. And you know what? It looks like it worked. A lot of people are concerned about a lot of irregularity, error, and fraud. Now, I'll tell you this, because I've got a bit more in the segment to talk about Republicans. Bill Barr said there was fraud. You want to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt and say that it changed the outcome. We need to get it into a court, get beyond the procedural hurdles which have held Trump back. But I'll tell you this, man, I've said it before. They Ocean's 11 Trump. While you're all looking in one direction, they've been planning this for a long time. They knew COVID freaked people out. They knew they had an opportunity. And I'll tell you why. When they say, no, mail-in voting was because people were scared. No. In Pennsylvania, they passed mail-in voting in October of 2019, well before anyone knew anything about COVID. That's when Act 77 got passed, and they created the no excuse mail-in voting system. The Democrats were planning this for some time. When COVID happened, they exploited it to expedite their plans. That's my opinion, sure. But they were already planning mail-in voting for some time. They said they want to make voting easier. Well, using the fear of COVID is backfiring, because now you're going to have people who are going to be like, I don't know, I'm sick. I can't go. I can't show up. I can't vote. And maybe it's the perfect excuse for some politicians who don't like Pelosi to avoid the blame. This is where it gets spiced. Check it out. If a politician doesn't vote for Pelosi, there might be a backlash. If Kevin McCarthy, GOP, becomes speaker, that's tremendous power for the Republicans. People are going to get mad at any Democrat who didn't support Pelosi. Now, naturally, I think the people who support progressives, who vote for progressives, probably don't want Pelosi to be Speaker of the House. But these people, some of them are careerists. So, 15 voted against her. But think about this. There may be some moderate Democrats who hate Pelosi and will just be like, oh, no, I'm sick. I can't come in. And it's the perfect excuse because their constituents, Democrat voters, are worried about COVID. And that's a perfect opportunity for people who don't like Pelosi to knock her down a peg or two, to make sure she doesn't get the speakership. Now, I'm not convinced it's an actual plausible scenario because I'd assume many of these Democrats don't like McCarthy, more. And so they'd probably want to show up. But if there's any inkling that they have COVID, they may have no choice but to sit this one out because their constituents would freak out. Less so if a Republican did it. I don't know, to what extent this will actually play out. Honestly, I think Pelosi will probably still win, but we do have the potential for more progressive defectors, which could mean Republicans win this one. They go on to say, many House lawmakers told the Hill they've been able to stay healthy all year by sheltering in place and avoiding the Capitol completely. Emergency rules pushed through by Democrats in May have allowed lawmakers to vote remotely or by proxy. That's meant elderly members, those battling cancer and other illnesses, or those caring for small children have not needed to fly back to Washington each week for votes. On December 18th, for example, nearly 90 Democrats voted by proxy. But the proxy voting rule expires with the new Congress, requiring lawmakers to be in the Capitol in person if they want to participate in the January 3rd floor vote for Speaker. The House will adopt a new rules package governing the 117th Congress just after the Speaker vote. Oh, no, man. That makes physical attendance tantamount to Pelosi's success. Since Democrats are on track to have a razor-thin majority, 222 seats, and at least 3 moderate members of the caucus are already on record saying they don't intend to vote for Pelosi. That's Connor Lamb, Jared Golden, and Alyssa Slotkin. Complicating the math, several Democrats have ongoing health concerns unrelated to COVID. Now, that's a bummer. I hope everybody's staying healthy. A handful of COVID cases on top of that, some fear could sink Pelosi's prospects. Well, there's more. There's the internal civil war. Check this out. 2 House newcomers declined to say if they'll back Pelosi for Speaker. Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman were guarded in their remarks. They say Rep-elect Cori Bush and Rep-elect Jamal Bowman both deflected under questioning on CNN State of the Union. Quote, I am going to make sure that voices of the people of St. Louis are heard and we have what we need. And so you will find out then, said Bush, who defeated Rep. William Lacey Clay Jr. in her district in August before winning easily in November. Dana Bash then turned to Bowman, who ousted longtime Rep. Elliot Engel in the state's Democratic primary in July. Bowman was no more forthcoming. You will find out when my vote is tallied. And again, organizing with our community to figure out what's best, he said. Pelosi, the only woman to serve as Speaker of the House, will be seeking her 4th 2-year term in the position. Democrats have a small overall majority, having lost at least 10 seats in the November election. And some Democrats, including Louisiana's Cedric Richmond, will be leaving at some point for positions in the Biden administration. Many people are leaving. This could be very, very bad news for Pelosi. And you know what? I'm not going to shed a tear over it. I really don't care. The majority of, look at this, majority wants Pelosi out as Speaker. Most Democrats support the Speaker staying on for a 4th term in charge of the House. Politico reports, a new Politico Morning Consult poll shows most Democrats think she should keep the gavel, but a majority of voters oppose Pelosi staying on as Speaker. Only 31% of all voters think Pelosi should be elected as Speaker when the new Congress begins, while 56% think she should not. Self-identified Democrats say the first woman House Speaker should stay on by a 20-point margin, 53 to 33. The amount of Democrats who are sick of Pelosi is substantial enough that the Republicans and them together means most people do not want Nancy Pelosi. And I am right there. And I'll tell you this, I've said it before. I defended Pelosi in the past because I thought AOC was playing silly games. I'm not a big fan of AOC. I think she's a careerist. But I think there are some good people on the Democrat side. Just maybe they're wrong or ignorant or, look, I think Tulsi Gabbard is pretty good. Rashida Tlaib has my respect for voting no on the omnibus spending bill, and probably because of the amount of money going towards families. I think the real reason to vote no is because of all the bloat and pork and the nonsense that's jammed into it. We need a bill for the people and not to be giving away our money at a time when we're at our most desperate. But there's a handful of Democrats who have done some good things and are worthy of getting some credit here. Pelosi exploited our goodwill. She was obsessed with Trump and she was screeching at the top of her lungs and she could not shut up about it. All these moderate Democrats ran under the notion that they would be supporting kitchen table issues in 2018. And I believe it was 31, taking back Republican districts that Trump had won and that Republicans had won, flipping Democrat. And then what did we see? Nancy Pelosi's obsession with impeaching Trump, a waste of our and everyone's time, and it did nothing. Except we saw Democrats defect. Jeff Van Drew, a Democrat, a moderate, switched parties, and he won re-election. Just goes to show you. The progressives are saying all of the swing district Democrats who supported Medicare for All ended up winning. But I don't think it's as cut and dry as that because Jeff Van Drew won, and that made a huge statement. They didn't think he was going to win because he's not strong enough Republican. No, but he showed principle mattered. Nancy Pelosi is off her rocker. She brought she took a Democrat majority and she crushed it with her psychotic obsession with the orange man. Imagine if she actually came forward and said, we are not playing these games. And then Mitch McConnell, who's been blocking basically everything the House has been passing. Yeah, it's been just jammed up the whole time. Then she could have had an actual argument against him. But all the Republicans have been doing is obstruction. But I tell you this, it is not just Democrats, my friends. Let me first be fair to the Republicans. And then I'll talk about the Republicans and their problems. Check this out. GOP lawmaker attacks Pelosi for pushing $2,000 stimulus checks demanded by Trump. They're trying to play this game, many people in the media. Trump demanded a $2,000 stimulus, and the lawmakers are attacking Pelosi for it. Trump said, cut the pork, the nonsense garbage like $10 million for Pakistani gender programs, and give the money to the American people. The Democrats offered up an amendment that all it did was increase payments, and then said, there you go, unanimous consent. And the Republicans were in between a rock and a hard place. Pelosi was just yanking our chain. She knew they could not support it because if the Republicans said, fine, just increase another what is another $1.8 trillion or whatever, or not 1.8, it's like 1.5 trillion more, some ridiculous amount of money stacked on top of the already massive $2.3 trillion bill. And they would have been attacked by their constituents for the obscene amount of expenditures. And because Trump said, cut the bloat. Pelosi was playing a virtue signal game and wasting our time. And progressives called her out for it. So my respect to those who did. They said, what we need is a substantive reform to this bill to get rid of the garbage and get the American people money, not a stupid game played by Pelosi. Now, it's not. There's other Republican reps who are also saying basically this. Pelosi stuffed bill with pork, hindering their support for $2,000 checks. Trump said it. Republicans said, fine. Not all of them. Rand Paul was speaking out against this. But Trump said, get the American people money. And I'll tell you what, I'm not a fan of massive $1 trillion spending packages that just extract the value of the American people and give it away. But if we're in this crisis, the Democrats made it by shutting everything down and going against the science. We were all okay with 15 days slow the spread, but now they've gone kind of nuts. The economy is in ruins in many of the blue states and big cities where they say 71% of the voters voted for, Joe Biden and they produced the economy. Well, great. Your Democratic leadership destroyed all that. So forgive me if I don't care when you bring up that stat. But they made this problem, and now they're suffering the results of it. It's their own fault. If you want a clean bill, then you need to get rid of the bloat because the American people need the money. So here's my point. I don't like borrowing trillions of dollars in our own value, but if the money is going straight to the American people to keep the economy, moving a little bit for the time being, at least the people are borrowing against their own buying power. That means it's going to hurt them in the long run, but people need relief now. You could get $2,700 per person if the $900 billion went to each individual, but they're not doing that. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Republicans are perfect and they're saints. I will defend Republicans because 56 voted no on the omnibus bill and only 2 Democrats voted no. So at least you have some Republicans, whether it was legitimate or not, saying no to this garbage. Pelosi is virtue signaling, wasting our time and causing these problems by not producing a clean bill. But okay. She'll come out with a clean bill, and we'll see if Republicans will step up if they get rid of all the omnibus bloat and garbage. We'll see. I'm not convinced. I think Republican or Democrat, it's all spinelessness. Let me show you this. Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger says Trump is trying to burn the U.S. and is throwing a temper tantrum with his fraud claims because he can't handle losing the election. Here's his tweet. Trump tweeted this. The Justice Department and the FBI have done nothing about the 2020 presidential election voter fraud, the biggest scam in our nation's history, despite overwhelming evidence. They should be ashamed. History will remember. Never give up. See everyone in D.C. on January 6th. Let me tell you something. Is there evidence of voter fraud? The answer is, oh yeah. And there's a lot. And Bill Barr said it. Is it widespread? Well, some of the evidence suggests it is. To what degree, though, did it change the outcome of the elections or flip anything? We honestly don't have conclusive evidence. I know Trump supporters say definitively all the time that they think, it's there. I think we have a lot. I think it needs to be, adjudicated presented in a court of law, and we need to see it laid out. There have been many documents, and I think they're shocking. The problem is much of this evidence is circumstantial evidence. That's the challenge. So present it. Trump can't get past procedural issues in these courts, and that's the real challenge. But Bill Barr said it. He said there's fraud, but to this date, we have not seen it on a scale that would have changed the outcome. What we need now is a legitimate inquiry. What Trump supporters have rightly pointed out is that instead of looking into the evidence to now and do the hard full-scale investigation, Democrats are trying to run out the clock. That is fair. In Maricopa County, there were subpoenas issued for the voting machines to do a forensic analysis. That's what you need to find definitive proof, and it was blocked. The county voter elections board or whatever said, we'll see you in court, running out the clock. So we won't know. And it's weird because I would appreciate some investigatory transparency. Here's what Republican Adam Kinzinger said. My God, trying to burn the place down on the way out because you can't handle losing. No evidence. Nothing but your temper tantrum and crazy conspiracies. Embarrassing. Talk about... this guy's lying. Look. He says, all this talk about January 6th from Donald Trump and other congressional grifters is simply explained. They will raise money and gain followers by blaming everyone else, knowing full well they can't do anything. It's sad and an utter scam. Restore our GOP. No, you get out of here. I'm not going to play games with the dude who's outright lying. There's no way this dude, a Republican, truly believes there's no evidence. Because I am not a Republican. I do not like the Republican Party. I voted for Trump, and there's a big difference. I did vote Republican, but it's for a variety of issues, and I probably won't in the future. I voted Democrat last time I voted. I'm an independent voter. Most people recognize that, but whatever. I cannot believe that this guy has not even Google searched it. I can't believe that he knows as much as he does about January 6th and what Trump is saying, and he never looked into it because either he's telling us right now, either he is completely incompetent and incapable of reading the news, or he's lying. I'm going to go ahead and say the guy's probably lying. It's a virtue signal. He is signaling to people that he is not part of that hardcore Trump base. The lines are being drawn between the establishment crony politicians who are like, I will say whatever I have to say to get elected, and those with principle. You can look at, I believe her name is Lauren Boebert. Maybe I'm getting your name wrong. Lauren Boebert. There's a new wave of Trump supporting populist Republicans, and they are calling to object on January 6th. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with what they think or what they believe, but you can see they're very willing to put up themselves their principles on the line and stand up for what they believe in. This guy is saying something, hoping that when all is said and done, he's betting Trump's going to lose, and he's going to say, see, look, I was on the side of the establishment. Yeah, go for it, buddy. Maybe the establishment will win. Sure, fine. But let me tell you something. If you think the Republican Party survives without Trump, I'm sorry, I think you are wrong. Let me show you this story. Why these Fox News loyalists have changed the channel to Newsmax. Why? I seem to recall many news stories saying that Tucker Carlson broke all-time cable TV news record ratings records. 5.3 million viewers per episode, the highest we've ever seen in cable TV. Now, there's a bigger population, but you'd think with cord cutting going on, people going digital and watching channels like mine, they wouldn't be watching cable. But man, did Tucker really pull it off. And then something happened. Fox News played the establishment game, and their ratings tanked, and now they're losing to CNN and MSNBC, and that is brutal. But people have flocked to Newsmax and One American News. Their ratings have gone through the roof. Newsmax doing really well. Now, a lot of Trump supporters are upset with Newsmax for the way they've taken things, but I'll tell you what this shows. It shows that the party is supporting Donald Trump, not you. The Republican establishment is in for a rude awakening, and I don't think they're going to win in Georgia. I could be wrong. I thought Trump was going to win. Okay, we'll see how things play out. But Joe Biden, he won for all intents and purposes that we get in the official vote counts, and we can have a discussion about all the evidence and anomalies and everything. So look, I'll leave it at that. You get the point. I don't know if I'm going to be right about Georgia, okay, but I think without Trump and this betrayal from the GOP, they're now kicking Trump in the back, in the butt, saying, we're done with you. We don't need you anymore. But they're wrong. So many of these Republicans in the House realized that, and they signed the Texas lawsuit. They signed on saying they would support Donald Trump. Well, I'll tell you this. These Republicans that are defying Trump and insulting him, they're going to lose. There's a reason why we saw a new wave of Trump supporting Republican populists who did win, primarying their opponents. There's a reason why Republicans didn't lose a single House seat, and they picked up many seats. Trump coming out and saying $2,000 for the American people, defying the GOP, who initially wouldn't offer that sum of money, clearly shows something. It shows that Donald Trump is not the same as the Republican Party. The Republican Party doesn't like Trump, and they're trying to wash their hands of him. But 90+% on average, Republicans support Donald Trump. So keep playing this game, and the GOP is going to crash. So I tell you this. I know that I started this video talking about Pelosi, and I think that's relevant because, look, I've already done videos about Trump, losing or whatever, and Republicans gaining, making victories across the board, which have been good for Republicans. Right now, the game is Pelosi's to lose. The next big election is for Speaker of the House. That's going to be happening on January 3rd, I believe, before the recall. The runoffs in Georgia, not the recall, the runoffs in Georgia. This is the next big play. Will Nancy Pelosi be Speaker? 15 defections like we saw last time around. And the answer is no. And it might be Kevin McCarthy. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe the Republicans don't get enough. But it's possible. With COVID and the fears that they were pushing, well, it may just backfire on Pelosi. They're the ones who have repeatedly called for special rules. I could be wrong. It's been a while, but I thought Republicans rejected the remote voting thing, too. It doesn't matter. They wanted to use this to cause fear, and now it's going to backfire on them. And, you reap what you sow. Ultimately, I think the establishment is about to get a rude awakening. Nancy Pelosi represents the establishment. She does. And so does Joe Biden. And right now, the Republican Party establishment is in for a rude awakening in Georgia. The Democratic establishment is in a rude for awakening 2 days before, on January 3rd, when Nancy Pelosi may actually lose Speaker. But look, I'm not going to pretend like Kevin McCarthy is some bastion of populism or anything. The parties are currently facing a populist revolt, and it's been going on for some time. We'll see how it plays out. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tomorrow at 10 a.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews, which is my other channel. Thanks for hanging out, everybody, and I will see you all then tomorrow.